So to start off with, today I represent a gentleman of the Compagnie France de la Marine. That is the French Marine companies here at Fort Niagara in 1759. Now, we're defending the place against the British, and to do so, we are given this weapon right here. This is an ordinary everyday flintlock musket. Now, before I go into exact gory detail on the process of loading, firing, and maintaining this, let me just ask, is there anyone here who has fired a flintlock before?
No.
Surprise me, there's one in every group. Alright, ladies and gents, even if you haven't fired one of these things before, you've definitely seen them around, either in movies or video games or some form of media. They're actually quite simple to use and quite simple in function. When you pull the trigger, this piece of flint is going to flip forward and strike this piece of steel. That should make sparks. Those sparks should fall on top of a trail of gunpowder here. That trail of gunpowder should burn inside the barrel, which should light off the powder inside the barrel, which should explode, which should generate enough explosive force to push a musket ball out the end of the gun in this direction. I noticed you caught on, so it should do all this. It doesn't always do all these things. If your gunpowder gets wet, or if, say, it's too windy and either the spark or the powder blows away from the pan, you'll have no ignition system and your gun won't fire. So all in all, this is about a 15% failure rate. For those of you wondering why you bothered to show up, I will remind you of the 85% success rate of these guns. So when your gun goes off, mark the distance between me and the cannon in the center of the ground. At this distance away, I could actually hit the barrel of that cannon with a shot from this gun. Seems impressive. Until you realize that from me to the group of people by the tree, I could take aim at the small child in the center, and I would actually hit the man on the far right. That is because this is just a musket. It is not a rifle. What is the difference?
Rifling.
Rifling. Does everybody else speak gun? I'll take that as a no. Right. Well, for those of you who don't speak gun, rifling refers to spiraled grooves cut into the inside of a musket barrel, or excuse me, a rifle barrel, that catches onto a projectile and makes it spin. With enough spin, that ball will fly straighter or farther. Muskets, however, do not have this. They are smooth pipes with loosely fitting projectiles. So in other words, this projectile isn't spinning as it emerges from the barrel, it's bouncing along the walls like a ricochet pattern, and it will fly off in whatever direction it wants past the 100-yard mark. Is this a sniper's weapon? I was expecting a lot more of a vehement no from an inaccurate weapon, but let me lay this out clear as day for you. An inaccurate weapon should not be used for an accurate shot over a long distance. So, are you going to use it as a sniper's weapon?
No, of course not.
That's more confidence-inspiring. All right, so are you going to use it on your own as a single soldier on the battlefield by yourself, hiding behind trees and rocks, taking pot shots at the enemy?
Maybe.
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 That is the biggest cop-out answer I have ever heard in my life. You aren't going to want to. And the reason is very clear, because you'll probably miss and waste your ammunition. So what you want to do with a gun like this is play to its strengths. I know I made it sound pretty terrible, but there are actually some advantages to this gun. For one, although rifles do exist in 1759, they are so expensive to produce that they actually end up costing 3 times as much for one rifle as for one musket. So in other words, this is the cheaper option. Guess who's giving us our guns, ladies and gentlemen?
The French.
But the French.
King.
Yes.
King.
Our king, our government is giving us these weapons. And knowing what you know of governments, do they like to spend exorbitant amounts of money on every one of their citizens?
No.
No. So they're going to give us the cheap stuff. Inadvertently, though, they give us another advantage. In addition to having more guys on the battlefield with muskets, that loosely fitting projectile means you're going to have an easier time loading this musket. So for every 1 rifle shot that goes off per minute, you're going to be able to fire off 4 musket shots per minute. The load time on this device is 15 seconds if you're a highly trained soldier. So with that, keep that in mind. Speed and quantity is our advantage. So what we do to take advantage of that is get all of our big group of guys to line up shoulder to shoulder with one another, cover a big area of land, and we all fire downrange at the exact same time in the exact same direction every 15 seconds. That creates a wall of flying lead. I don't care how inaccurate your gun is, one of you is going to hit something if you all group fire like that. So if you shoot first, you shoot fastest, and you shoot with the most people, you're going to carry an advantage on this battlefield. So let me show you what that looks like on a one-man scale. I'll warn them before it goes off. So in my hands right now is a cartridge, a tube of paper containing a pre-measured amount of black powder, a lead musket ball, and of course the paper itself. I tear open the cartridge with my teeth, and I'll pour a small amount of powder into the side of the weapon. Not too much, just enough to take a spark. The rest of the powder goes straight down the barrel, followed immediately by the musket ball crumpled up in the paper. Now, I'm going to take this ramrod and push the paper down on top of the musket ball. The reason I do this, ladies and gentlemen, is because if I did not ram the paper down, that loosely fitting musket ball could very well just roll out the end of my gun if I point even slightly downhill. So that paper will stop that from happening so that the ball does not leave the barrel until I pull the trigger. I'll let this bird pass. Go on, sparrow. Right. So now while I have my opportunity, let's prepare for the best. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. And that's what you get for ignoring my calls. So, with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, you all saw that massive amount of smoke and fire, right? You all heard that boom. Some of you probably smelled that smoke as it blowed back over you. Well, that was one gun. The battlefield is not one gun. It's hundreds of these things. It's 12 cannons the size of that one in the center of the grounds. And all of that is happening at the same time every 15 seconds or so. So in the midst of all this fog, it's noisy, it's stinky, it's deafening, it's confusing, it's blinding. Somebody in your uniform, with your earth tone pants and your monochrome shoes and your grayish jacket and even your grayish shirt that is covering your hands, you're going to disappear on the battlefield. You almost disappeared against the wall, too. So, do you want to disappear on this battlefield? You're giving me a slow nod yes. Why would you want to disappear?
Everybody's shooting at you.
And so?
You don't want to get shot.
You don't want to get shot.
By who?
My enemy.
Your enemies.
Yeah.
All right, that is a fair point. You don't want to get shot by your enemies, and camouflage does a great job of hiding you from your enemy. That is until your entire line of 70 to 100 guys opens fire all at once every 15 seconds, giving your enemy a fantastic light and smoke show that reveals exactly where you all are standing every quarter of a minute. But you know who can't see that light and smoke show?
Themselves.
You are not alone on the battlefield, ladies and gentlemen. Your own soldiers are
Behind you.
200 paces, also lined up in those big lines of guys, also all prepared to fire downrange at the same time in the same direction every quarter of a minute.
Yeah.
And if they can't see you to avoid you, what happens to you? You get shot.
Shot.
So camouflage, in its very effort to hide you and stop you from getting shot, will actually end up getting you shot from 2 directions, the front
and the back.
So what we want to do instead is be bright and distinct. Notice I said bright and distinct. I can see you from a mile away in your white coat, madam. But there is a reason why French soldiers like me aren't wearing a plain white coat. Because there's no distinguishing marks on that coat to let me know where you're from, what your rank is, what your weapons specialization is, what speed you're supposed to be moving at, with what equipment to wear under whose command, and whether or not I should shoot you because of it. So what do you do with a person like that on the battlefield that you can see but not identify? What was that?
Shoot.
You shoot at them anyway. Ask questions later. Because if you don't recognize them, they must not be on your side.
But
So, for that reason, it does pay to have something a little bit more distinct, like, say, the fact that my white coat, madam, sorry to flex on you, but my white coat has blue boot cuffs. It has this certain cut, this flowery cape to it on the side. It has these blue turnbacks on it. It doesn't have a collar. All of this stuff is unique to the Compagnie Franche de la Marine. And the fact that I don't have any gold lace on my cuffs means I don't have any rank. So what this tells you is that I should be fighting on behalf of France in a foreign territory. I should be using a musket to do it. I should be marching in a line, first on the battlefield, first off the battlefield. I should be going places on a ship, but not fighting aboard a ship like a Navy person would. I'm just going to disembark to fight, and I should not be giving orders to anybody. All of that information just by looking at my uniform. So if you ever wondered why we dress like we're going to a fancy masked ball, this is why. The gun dictates everything about what we do, how we move, how we fight, how we dress, everything. Now with this, ladies and gentlemen, I've done my share of the demonstration, but I will turn it over to the audience to provoke any other questions, inquiries, insults, assertions of superior knowledge, anything you might have for me.
Why does the British insist on wearing that bright red color?
Why did the British insist upon wearing the bright red color? For the same reason the French insist upon wearing the bright white and the bright blue, to stick out on the battlefield and to be recognized. But they chose that specific red. Well, rather, I used the wrong word for it. They didn't choose that specific red. It just so happens that the root that produces that cheap quality red grows in abundance in England, the madder root. It is in fact one of the cheapest versions of dye, aside from undyed white wool that the French are wearing. And since the French claim the white, the English don't want anything to do with it, so they just take the next cheapest thing.
Did the French use Marines for ship combat also? Do you know?
Ship-to-ship combat is usually reserved for the Navy, but I'm guaranteeing you that should ship-to-ship combat be engaged in, like boarding action, Marines will be called upon to defend the ship if they are already on board.
Okay.
However, muskets are terrible weapons for ship-to-ship combat. Usually, if you're engaging long range, why aren't you using the cannons, which the Navy guys on board the ship are already manning? And if there's already a boarding action, why are you using these muskets, which have such long barrels, when you could be using either the cutlass to engage in close quarters ship-to-ship combat, or if you must engage in range, pistols, because those are close-range combat weapons. That's why you see so many sailors or pirates with pistols or blunderbusses or carbines or short guns of the sort, because they are meant for close quarters combat on board a vessel. This is not.
What was the effective range of the weapon with the rifle bore, the true rifle?
So that is a good question, and this is just something that makes the rifle seem all that much better too. Both the rifle and the musket have a lethal range of 300 yards. Only the rifle has an accurate range of 300 yards as well. However, muskets only have an accurate range of 100 yards, but 4 times the speed, so hence why we're using those.